Until the late 1990s, it was just possible that as you approached Lindfield High Street, the sound of a bygone age might be heard on the breeze. No, it wasn't the supernatural. It was the Lindfield Wireless Museum getting ready for another day in the past. I invite you to come with me to meet Ray Lewworthy for a trip down memory lane. Ray, what first gave you the idea of setting up your museum?
Well, I suppose around about the mid-50s, when valve radios were becoming obsolete and giving way to these newfangled transistor radios. And I've been in the radio trade all my working life. I decided I'd like to preserve some of these old friends of mine.
Ray, I see that's your visitors book. Where do they all come from?
It's amazing the number of places that people do come from. I have recorded in this visitors book America, Canada, Europe, the Far East. It's quite amazing.
I understand this is the oldest exhibit you've got in the museum. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, that's quite right. This machine was manufactured in 1922 by the General Electric Company. It was a very upmarket machine, costing something in the region of £5 10 shillings, which of course was not the working man's type of price. It represented about 6 weeks' wages to him.
Do any of your exhibits have a special or unusual sort of history?
Yes, this one is rather interesting because it comes from the era of the do-it-yourself. Around about 1930, articles like this appeared in catalogues and magazines, giving you instructions on how to build your own radio. This type of do-it-yourself kit meant that people who otherwise would not be able to afford a radio could build one very, very cheaply and have the advantages of this modern scientific novelty, radio.
Ray, how long has the museum been open here?
Since 1988, when I started the museum with a small collection.
Well, you've certainly got a good collection here now. When did you first start putting it together?
In 1960, the collection really started with the advent of the new technology, transistor radios, and I wanted to preserve as many of these old valve radios as I possibly could.
How many people are involved in running it?
Basically, it started with just myself, with no help whatsoever. But in recent months, a friend of mine, Pete Richards, has taken over the technical side of it, keeping the old bangers going and restoring them to working order.
Well, how do you manage for spares?
Well, as you can see, we have a reasonable stock of valves, from the more modern miniature ones to some of the older types. But with regard to components, this can be a problem because sometimes we have to repair a component, or when we can't do that, we try and salvage one from an old set.
This is a rather interesting little receiver, a 2-valve battery receiver in a Bakelite case, manufactured in 1930 and given away with cigarette coupons. If in 1930 you had smoked BDV cigarettes manufactured by Godfrey Phillips, you would have saved the coupons, 1 coupon in every packet of 10, and for no less than 500 coupons, which you sent away, this was the radio that they sent you in return, and this was your gift. It is a battery operated set and of course needed accumulators and HT batteries.
Well, now this looks like an interesting cupboard. Is there anything of particular interest in here?
Yes, there is an interesting 3-in-1 valve. This valve, made in Germany in 1926, consists of 3 valves in 1 glass bowl. Not only has it got the 3 valves, but it has all the components in the base that enable the 3 valves to be coupled together. In other words, it's a 3-valve set all in 1 bowl.
I see we're now into the 1950s and 60s. They seem to be getting a lot smaller.
Yes, that's very true. As a result of wartime technology, components became miniaturized, and especially valves, and therefore they were able to make these sets so much smaller and compact, and it was in fact the era of the second set, when people not only had a set in the best room of the house but could afford to buy one for the bedroom or the kitchen. This Philips set, also from the 1950s, was significant because it was the start of clock radios as we know them today. The only difference being, of course, this was an analogue clock with hands, but it still woke you up in the morning and played music to you. Late 40s and 50s was the era of the very small portables, and some of these valve portables, all of which have 4 miniature valves in them, are representative of those sets of the era. They are the predecessors of the present day transistor radio. And it's quite remarkable how in this era the valves and components have become so small and compact.
Apart from wirelesses, Ray, I see you're into gramophones as well.
Yes, these are a few examples of exhibits representative of the 78 record era. This one's rather interesting, an HMV from 1931, typical of the portable picnic record players. A few turns of the handle to wind it up, allow it to pick up speed, and away we go.
Peculiar looking piece of apparatus. What is it, Ray?
It's known as a Mickey phone. It was made in 1926 in Switzerland, and the beauty of it is it's one of the smallest really portable gramophones ever made. It folds up into a case no bigger than a very large pocket watch, the size of which is indicated by the round of that container there. I'll sort of slide it further in.
Well, there it is, another small part of the history of Lindfield. No one was prepared to take over the museum when Ray was no longer able to carry on. The museum contents were distributed amongst other enthusiasts, and this video record is all that now remains.